Hello, welcome to Roy's Book Reviews. I am Roy, and today I would like to share my thoughts on a novel called Little Bee by Cleave. So I am going to get to it in a moment after playing music for a bit longer because this is my channel and I can do whatever I want. And now I am going to talk about Little Bee by Cleave. Who is a wonderful writer, and Little Bee is a masterfully crafted book. The dual narration alternates between two women, Sarah and the title character who has renamed herself Little Bee. It is no small challenge for a male author to write exclusively from a woman's perspective, or two women in this case. But Cleave's execution, in my opinion, is just about flawless. There is also the fact that the character Little Bee is a black woman from Nigeria, and Cleave is a white male author. I have no idea if the services of a sensitivity reader were employed. I do know that in this day and age, there is increased focus and pressure on authors not to make a single misstep when writing from a point of view that is not their own personal one, or writing about a culture that is not the one that they belong to or raised in. Not even through the lens of fiction, where the opportunity for make-believe is supposed to be endless. So if you happen to be a very tall Irishman who feels like telling a story through the eyes of a Pakistani dwarf, that should be your prerogative. But in this day and age, you better make sure that you have your Pakistani dwarf point of view down cold before you make such an attempt, or else you're probably gonna inspire some think pieces and angry critiques in the world of social media. So anyway, back to my review of Little Bee. I'm going to read from my words at Goodreads, where I wrote that some authors these days may be less willing to take chances when it comes to slipping into skin that is, too different from their own. Because they're concerned that they will be mocked across the span of bookish social media accounts for failing an authenticity test. As an author myself, I know that such voices of criticism must be drowned out. This is not to say that concerns about cultural insensitivity aren't valid. They most certainly are. But first and foremost, authors must service the stories they have dreamed into being and the characters who populate them. And while they may not share the same race or gender or nationality or economic class, what an author must share with and find within every primary character in their writing, ranging from heroine to villain, is the humanity that we all possess. And I would say that Cleave definitely accomplishes this in Little Bee. His personal background, I'd venture to guess, is closer to that of Sarah, who's a white magazine editor from England with a financially comfortable lifestyle, than it is to that of Little Bee, who is an undocumented refugee from a predominantly black country who is able to get out of a detention center after escaping from a violent landscape, but knows she's living on borrowed time for only so long as she can manage to stay under the radar. At no point when addressing the reader, either as Sarah or as Little Bee, did I detect a false note in Cleave's writing. The two women in his novel are as different from each other as the places they are from. Sarah is older. She's a mother, a wife when she first meets Little Bee, along with being another man's mistress. Her existence is more sophisticated than that of a teenager like Little B from a small village that is far less advanced in technological development than Sarah's hometown. This is not to say that Little B comes from a poor region, um, since there is oil to be unearthed there. But the riches generated by black gold do not make its way to someone in Little B's position. What does reach her is violence, the barbaric cruelty of men. One thing this book does not provide is adult male characters who exhibit or earn much sympathy from readers. Sarah's husband is a weak man who fails miserably when given the opportunity to sacrifice for others. His cowardice haunts him and eventually is a main factor leading him to suicide. As for Sarah's lover, who has a wife and 3 children, Lawrence is perhaps less of a coward than Andrew, but he is certainly no less selfish. Sarah, of course, is also flawed, but caring for a young child who is dealing with the trauma of losing his father without fully understanding what death even is, a little boy hiding from hurt behind the Batman costume he wears constantly, does not allow Sarah much opportunity to think of herself first. And she is the only one in this story who is able to summon the bravery and willingness to sacrifice on Little B's behalf when Andrew fails to be up to this task. These 2 women come from different worlds, but once their paths cross, they are inextricably linked. Little B knows the terror of a homeland where men will murder her as an afterthought, which causes her to fantasize in every setting she finds herself in about how she would quickly kill herself in the event that the men she fears suddenly arrived. Are the men of England who may not physically harm her, but will send her back to Nigeria, where she is unlikely to survive, are they any less merciful than the Nigerian men who killed her sister? When you're born into circumstances as unfortunate and dire as those of Little B, when learning to speak like those from a safer place is not sufficient to stop them from imprisoning you until ejecting you because all they see is a drain on resources rather than someone to show compassion towards, the odds of survival are long. But in between terrors, there are moments of beauty and joy and brief respites that resemble tranquility. The nobility of someone who does not have the luxury of immigrating when conveniently legal to do so can be as difficult for citizens of a first world nation to notice as a single little bee in a field of blooming flowers. And when born into circumstances as fortunate as those of Sarah, that does not mean tragedy cannot come calling. Beyond being spoiled by privilege, Sarah also finds it necessary to fight for causes that are greater than herself. And until arrival of the moment that puts you to the test, none of us knows if we will turn out to be a coward or a warrior. Chris Cleave does a fantastic job illustrating these truths via the women of his invention. Through his prose, we recognize that beneath various superficial differences is a core of sameness that allows people who are willing to connect with one another. So that was my take on this wonderful novel, Little Bee by Chris Cleave. He took on a daunting task, in my opinion, writing a story that is not from his perspective, not from his culture, not from his place in society, but instead from that of someone who others should be able to better appreciate. And that is something that all of us need to be able to do. So until next time, this is Roy of Roy's Book Reviews. Wishing you happy reading. If you've read Little Bee, drop a line in the comments. Let me know what you thought.